Welcome along, fellow time travelers. This time around, I'm talking to Jacob from the History with Jacob podcast. We're going to talk about what Jacob is up to and his awesome podcast and all kinds of cool historical stuff. You're going to love it. So sit back and pour yourself a cup of coffee or a tankard of tea or a mug of mead or a chalice of cider or a flagon filled with any beverage of your choice, and join Jacob and I for an episode of Sipapalooza. Hey, Jacob, how's it going?
Hey, Scott, it's going great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Do you have a cup of coffee or a tankard of tea or a mug of mead or a chalice of cider or a flagon? Tell the truth.
To be honest with you, I'm just drinking water right now.
Okay. Is it at least in a flagon? Come on.
I will tell you this. My drink of choice is scotch.
Oh.
So I love a nice glass of smoky Lagavulin scotch. The smokier, the better. That is my choice of
Very
drink.
interesting. I'm going to start telling people that my parents named me after scotch, but I don't think anybody will believe that, but you never know. Anyway,
I'll believe you.
I came across your awesome X account, which is pretty cool. It's pretty new, isn't it?
I've been doing it for almost a year. I believe like the end of August of 2025 was when I started it. But I will say I didn't really get my feet underneath me for at least 3 or 4 months. When I started, I knew I wanted to do history. I started as a on this day account, which I found out very quickly. There are quite a few of those on X, but that's kind of how I got my feet wet until I really figured out until I figured out what I wanted to really be posting about. And I found, obviously, American history is the main niche that I post about. But even within that, I really try to tell stories. So I'm not just the guy that posts on this day, this happened, or I'm not just the guy that posts, this is a fact, this is a fact. I try to tell a story. So I pick what I post based on if I think it's compelling, if I think it's entertaining, because I'm not just trying to inform people. I'm also trying to entertain a little bit.
I get it. So the story of America began, I guess we can go back to the 1600s with the Pilgrims. Is there a specific time period that you try to focus on? 1600s, 1700s, 1800s? Is there a cutoff period? No way am I mentioning anything after 1975.
That's a good question. I don't hold myself to a strict standard timeline wise. I do find that I end up posting about presidents quite a bit, but I will say I usually end up posting mainly on things between 1700s and 1800s. Now, obviously, this year is America's great 250th anniversary. So because of that, I have been intentionally focusing a lot on the Revolutionary War period and directly after that, as America was first being built and they were coming up with everything. But I find the 1800s also to be particularly fascinating. A lot of the figures that come out of there and the freedom that they had. You still had this massive frontier. And if you had an idea and you were mildly charismatic, you could just go pick a plot of land somewhere and you could start your own community. You could start your own town. Some people even started their own religions. Like I know Mormonism started then, right? And that's a really interesting story. And it's still very influential today, millions of followers. But there's a lot of other religions that just different crazy things that happened back then. And the average American, they were so much more of Renaissance people, so much more of tinkerers, thinkers, daring risk takers. There's a lot of inspiring figures from the 1800s. So I find that century very compelling as well, which obviously the Civil War happened in the 1800s and that always gets focused on, which rightfully so. But because that is such a massive moment in the 1800s, a lot of people forget what the rest of the 1800s was like, which I find very fascinating. So I'm sure if you keep following me, as time progresses, you'll probably see a lot more posting about that, about stuff in the 1800s.
Yeah. The Revolutionary War time period, I think, is always popular. There's a lot of patriotic people in the United States, and they just love hearing the stories. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams. Did I say John Adams yet? John Jay. My goodness, so many brilliant men. So do you try to focus on personalities, the men or places? Hey, this town was built and such. Or do you try to focus on events or whatever it is that you just happen to be interested in? That's what you'll focus on.
Excellent question. A little bit of your last point. that whatever I find interesting at the moment, I will post about. But I notice I tend to focus more on people and the stories of people because I don't know, I guess I'm drawn to it. I think a lot of people are drawn to that. And maybe it's because you can relate to a person a little bit, or maybe it's because it's inspiring to hear about exceptional people doing remarkable things. But yeah, I do tend to focus on people and this and different stories of people.
Yeah. Truth is stranger than fiction, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think history is more entertaining than fiction too, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Did you see the HBO miniseries about John Adams?
I have not yet. You are not the first person to ask me that, and it is on my list. I'm working my way through Turn right now.
Oh, that's a good show.
The AMC show. Yeah. I got two young kids at home. So I do not have a lot of time to watch TV, especially since I started running this X account. And now that I've added a podcast on top of that, I don't spend a ton of time in front of the TV, but I am slowly working my way through a lot of those shows that I haven't watched yet.
The John Adams miniseries was so well done that it's difficult to believe that it was actually done. Because Hollywood usually beats up on heroic heroes. And this miniseries was so beautifully acted and written and directed, and the cinematography, everything about it was amazing. Everything. There wasn't a part about it like, I don't know, this part. No, everything about it was great. And you saw the incredible amount of sacrifice that these men made back then to get into a horse-drawn carriage and go to Philadelphia or go to New York, or to get into a boat the size of, and I'm exaggerating here, to get into a boat the size of a Buick and go across the ocean for 2 months. And maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't get there. It's not like they would know if there's a storm coming or anything else. And it was incredible because then they would go over there. And in the case of Ben Franklin, he was gone for years. He never saw his wife ever again. He was married. He's all right. I got to go to France and try to take care of this. All right, honey, when will you be back? I don't know, when I'm done. Okay. Never saw her ever again. Incredible. And now maybe he didn't want to go back, but still, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, a lot of these guys, they went over there. And these are really heroic stories. The sense that these guys are signing the Declaration of Independence, it was a death warrant. And there's just something about the American personality to go out there and take a chance and let's see if we can make this work. Imagine the kinds of people. I went to Salt Lake City a couple of years ago for the first time, and I toured that, I think they call it This Is It, where they were traveling and they were trying to find a place to establish their Mormon community. And they were up on this beautiful mountain, and looking down at Salt Lake City, which didn't really exist then. And they were like, this is it. This is the place. And started from scratch, just their friends and family and whoever locals may have been around. And they got things rolling. And it was pretty exciting. Do you consider yourself more of a, and I don't say this in a derogatory way at all, do you consider yourself more like an armchair historian, or do you try to go out there and see places when you can for yourself?
I definitely like to see places. It really helps when you're there. It really helps it come alive more because you can read about something in a book all day long. You could listen to a podcast about it all day long. But at the end of the day, it doesn't hit you the same as when you're there. You can read about Kings Mountain with the Over Mountain Men, right? And read about how it's a steep ridge and read about how the battle went back and forth and the Over Mountain were popping up from behind rocks here and trees there. But it's not the same as when you're there and then you can picture the battle happening while you're there. Now, I will say that with the caveat, like I said with TV, I don't get out much these days. So to answer you truthfully, at the moment, I am probably more of an armchair historian, which, hey, thank God for the internet and for wonderful podcasts and books and just all these resources we have now that I can sit at home while my kids are taking a nap, which actually that's what they're doing right now. And I can dive into a world of history from my armchair.
I won't say that's better, but in many ways it is. I've been to plenty of places where I was disappointed and I thought, you know what? I wish I just had the photo in my mind and I didn't actually see what this was like. I'll give you an example. It's a terrible example, but I used to go to Washington, D.C. all the time. And up until about a year ago, it was a mess. There were bums everywhere and stickers everywhere, and it was dirty, it was disgusting. And you think to yourself, this is Washington, D.C. These monuments have been here, these beautiful buildings have been here, and it's a freaking wreck. But you look at it on TV or in photos, you're like, wow, what a beautiful place. And it's supposed to be all cleaned up now, which is great. So I'm all for it. And I'm not just always interested in man-made places. A year or two ago, I think for the last few years, I've been going to Colorado, and I went to a place that I had never been to in my life. I went to Colorado Springs. Have you ever heard of it?
Yes, I live relatively close to the Springs.
Okay, so I went there because I always wanted to see Garden of the Gods. And the fact that Tesla spent some time there was a bonus. And to be able to walk through Garden of the Gods and then to go to these beautiful little towns around there, it was just really astonishing to me. And then on the way back, I went to unsinkable Molly Brown's house in Denver. And it was incredible because this woman was indeed a legend. And she was at the time rolling in dough. And to be able to walk through her house and be like, oh my God, this is her bedroom. You can go inside of her bedroom. And I made a video about it. I put it up on YouTube. And whenever I post a video on YouTube that I think nobody cares, who cares? Oh, I'm going to do it anyway. I want to see it. Maybe there's 3 or 4 other people. Those videos always seem to do exceptionally well. So you can't even predict what people might be interested in.
Yes, that is so true. And I'll say, I have been to Molly Brown's house as well. And it's a beautiful old house. It's awesome. And I was impressed, like almost every one of those older houses I go to, of the library that they had there. Just with the leather bound books and everything is so beautiful. And you start reading some of those titles. It always inspires me to build my library bigger and better. But to your point about how when you put something online and you think, oh, nobody's going to care, and then it blows up. I find that with my X account all the time. I'll have a post that I think, oh my gosh, this story is so good. This is going to go viral. And then it goes just nowhere. And then I might put a post out that I'm like, this is pretty interesting. And then I check back on my phone a few hours later and it's just going crazy. So yeah,
it was during the whole virus nightmare and everybody was all of a sudden a microbiologist and they had answers about everything. And I'm like, can't we just stick to what we were talking about before? Do you really have to put in your 2 cents about this? I had one dedicated to the Dakota apartment building in New York City where John Lennon lived. And people found it incredible that I had an entire page talking about one building, because you would think, how much could you talk about one building? I always had something to say about the Dakota. There were so many famous people that lived there. Lauren Bacall, Zero Mostel, Roberta Flack, obviously John and Yoko. So I loved it. And then people were going in there and they were saying, this is what you talk about? It's like, look, go somewhere else then. Go somewhere else. Nobody asked you to come here and comment about what we're talking about. I personally liked Facebook in the sense that you could really see people's names. There wasn't anybody named Caterpillar 9743 like you have on X, because then you get to know people a little bit better. I also like the idea of having a smaller group. I know on socials, the whole idea is to get as many people to follow you as possible. I didn't want that. I would rather have 50 people that really care about the same things that I care about than having 9,000 people just watch it or even just like it and then you don't hear from them. So I'd rather have a core group, because when you have a subject that you're interested in, you kind of want to have your people where they'll understand why you're posting certain things. So I'm getting back into Facebook now, mainly because I'm getting away from YouTube. YouTube, this will be an interesting conversation if you want to have it, but it's only been a few years where this thing called AI has been around. Now, it's probably been around longer, but nobody really knew too much about it. Then you have ChatGPT and the rest. And for years, I was always hiring graphic designers on Fiverr to take black and white photos and colorize them, or add a horse-drawn carriage, or show some people and the rest of it. And I spent a fortune doing that. And those images are all over my Facebook accounts. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, 1, 2, 3 years ago, you can now take these images and you could add horse-drawn carriages, and you could add men in hats, you could add women in their dresses, and you could do all these amazing things. And YouTube for a while was encouraging it. But then I think so many people jumped on the bandwagon and it was turning into a grift. And it was a very annoying thing that was happening because you would go on YouTube and it seemed like everything was AI, and you had no idea what was real or not anymore. Now, granted, if you have a image and horse-drawn carriage goes by and it's obvious that it was a photograph, that's a different story. And now YouTube seems to be scaling back from that. They don't want people doing it anymore. So it'll be interesting to see where things go from here. So what are your thoughts about that, about having historic images and either creating them from scratch or jazzing up historic photos to show them in a more joyful or interesting way? Hey, did you know I'm the author of a lot of books, including ones about the homes of the Beatles? Kindly check out the links below to learn how to buy them. I have written about the Dakota, home of John Lennon, Friar Park, home of George Harrison, and Tidhurst Park, home of John Lennon and then Ringo Starr. And I've written some other books too. You could also make a donation to support my research and productions. You could also join me on other platforms for exclusive content.
Yeah, I've noticed that too on YouTube. So with my podcast right now, I'm really focusing on the audio of it, and I make it as cinematic as possible, right? I have background music in it, I have sound effects, and they're short too. So they're 10 minutes long is my goal. So I'm able to have that high, excellent quality throughout the whole thing because it's so short, as opposed to being an hour-long history podcast. But I've dipped my toes into the YouTube waters ever so slightly. So I've put a video out for all of my podcast episodes on YouTube, but really all it is just my podcast logo, Stories of American Legends, and then it has closed captioning underneath it. So it's not really a video. But I've noticed just clicking around on YouTube history, yeah, you're right, man. There's a lot of AI. There's a lot of AI out there, especially on the thumbnails. And yet, maybe to your point, a lot of people can't tell the difference. To me, I can definitely tell when something is completely generated from AI. And I don't know, man. I don't like it. I guess I'm torn. I'm not an anti-AI guy by any stretch of the imagination. It just has to be done well. And a lot of people are very reckless with it. Or if somebody only relies on creating images from AI, or you see some of it on X too. It doesn't seem to be as bad on X, or maybe it's just my timeline isn't bad because I don't interact with the bad stuff. I saw a post went viral the other day, and it was rage baiting the Europeans. And this guy was posting about how Fahrenheit was superior to Celsius. And so he had an AI generated picture of George Washington changing a thermostat. I think that's awesome. I think that is funny. That's clearly a meme. I think that is a good use of AI. And you put a historical figure in there. I thought that was cool. But now if somebody in a serious podcast where they're telling a story, I don't know, man. If it's done really well, like there's this guy on X, Dave, who he does that really well. So he'll use AI to create images of historical situations that there just isn't a good painting of, or that or it's so old that there isn't a good picture of. So in that case, it can be good. I think you just have to trust the person who's doing it. The problem is, I don't think AI is good enough at this point that it can give you really good picture generations without just a ton of edits on it. So it's like you really have to be dedicated and really spend a lot of time into it, which is that's what Dave does. I tried my hand at it a few times, and I don't have the patience for it, and maybe I don't understand how to write the prompts correctly, but I'll get stuff that just it just doesn't look good, man. Or there's some really bad historical inaccuracies in it, or the guy has 7 fingers, just stuff like that. And then it's okay, make him only have 5 fingers. And then suddenly it makes the hand 2 times bigger. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. Now, I will say something I do really like, which I think maybe is answering your question better, is when people use AI to colorize black and white photos. I think that can be really cool, and that can be done really well. Now,
Yeah, it has saved me a fortune. I used to hire people because it was like $5 on Fiverr, and it was over and over again because I had this huge collection of black and white photos of New York City, different buildings, and I'm like, colorize this, and now I'm able to pump them out like crazy, and they're pretty accurate.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the thing with AI though, this is what I learned. So if you give Grok or ChatGPT or Gemini, if you give them a black and white photo and you say colorize this, it actually doesn't technically colorize it. It recreates the image from scratch. So you just have to be really careful to make sure that they don't completely change something. Or
Yeah, that happens
change.
quite a bit. I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't mind the images because they keep getting better. And I don't mind people like you or people like me or people that are really interested in history using different tools and trying different things. What really bothers me are the grifters who have no interest whatsoever. So what they'll do is they'll watch, let's say, a video of mine that'll do really well. And because this happened to me a handful of times on YouTube, which is another thing that turned me off of it. And they'll just go to ChatGPT and they'll say, write me an 800-word script about the history of the blah, blah, blah building. And the information might not be correct. And they don't know this because they're 22 years old and they're in India. And so what the hell do they know? They've never been to, let's say, New York. They wouldn't know if it's correct or not. And so they have this script. Then they give it to 11 labs that mispronounces things. And the captions are all wrong. And you think to yourself, what's going on here? And then you read the comments and people are like, oh, I love this video. This is so great. This video should be taught in schools. And I'm like, it's wrong. This is wrong information. How in the world are you buying this? So YouTube, I think, is trying to require people that if you do use AI, I think using AI for scripts is more dangerous than using AI for images, because you could always look at an image and be like, I don't think that's right. But information, you never know. And if you're just going to count on ChatGPT or Grok or Gemini or something else for the scripts, that's a problem. When you use these programs, I assume you do, is it to do basic research to get an idea? And how often do you spot things that are wrong? And if you do spot it that's wrong, do you tell? I do it all the time. I'm like, you're wrong. This isn't right. You have no idea what you're talking about. And it writes back to me, you're right. So tell me about your experience with doing research with some of these programs.
Yes, I am in complete 100% agreement with you on your view on AI there. Yeah, the grifting is bad. That's interesting to hear about that on YouTube. I will say that is one thing I love about X is it's harder for people to get away with that kind of stuff on X because X has that handy dandy Grok button on the top right corner of every post. And you click on it one time and then it comes up and you can say, is this true? And so doing that actually has helped out a lot on X. And once again, and maybe it's just my timeline that is really good and full of really good accounts. But I've noticed if somebody does just vomit out some AI created blurb, that it will not take long for someone to comment and call them out on it. And if the post goes big enough, it always gets community noted. So I will say X is better about keeping the AI slop in line because of that, I think. So I'm not sure what YouTube can really do about that. And I'm not sure if Facebook and Instagram have any tool like that as well. But I find that good about X. Now, yeah, and to your question, yes. So I definitely use AI to help me research. It's a really good tool. And typically what I do is I have two different AIs that I use. I use Grok, which I find to be the best as it's the truth-seeking AI. It usually has the least biased answers when you ask it to research something. But Claude is pretty good just in general for like a Google on steroids, essentially. But what I really like about both Grok and Claude is they tell you exactly where they got the information. So you can pull up the resource list and you can see exactly which websites it used to pull the information from. And Wikipedia is usually pretty decent, especially with the kind of content I'm looking up, because most of the time I'm researching early American history, like 1700s, 1800s. So you really end up coming back to the same resources over and over again. So so I guess what I'm trying to say is it's always good to fact check AI. And the way to do that is by looking at what its resources are. So what websites did it pull the information from? And then at the end of the day, it's always better just to go to that website then and you get the information from there. And since I've been doing this for not a long time, but a little while now, I've been doing it long enough to know which websites are repeatedly reliable. And then so to know when I can trust it. And I will say this too. Yeah, I know. So they call it hallucinating. And that's when AI just makes things up. So I could definitely see if somebody says, hey, give me a script on this. I could see how that would just start making stuff up. But if you're just asking it research questions, it definitely doesn't get it right 100% of the time. And to your point, I will definitely argue back with it. But I would think it would hallucinate less when you're just asking it research questions as opposed to telling it to generate something for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Whenever I ask it to do any research, I actually say, don't lie to me. Don't make stuff up. Don't hallucinate. Tell me your sources. If you don't know something, don't tell me. And because, it's getting better at it. But even 6 months ago or a year ago, forget about it. It would just make stuff up. I'm like, what are you talking about? Where do you get this information? You don't even know what you're saying, do you? You're right. It tells you that you're right. Like, oh God. But it's getting better. You've done 2 episodes so far of your podcast. And the first one is Samuel Whitmore. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
And your second one was Peter Francisco. So do you have an outline already set up for the rest of the year? Are you going to try to do one a week, one a month? What is your plan?
So my plan is I release them every other Wednesday. In the morning on Wednesday, it's bi-weekly, a new episode will come out. And much similar to my X post right now to celebrate 250 years of freedom with America, I'm definitely front loading it with American Revolution heroes. I'm not going to keep it strictly to chronological order, but it probably will loosely follow a chronological order just based on what I've told you before, how the Revolutionary War right now, and then also I have a high interest in the 1800s, so that it will seem to naturally follow. And so I should say the name of the podcast is Stories of American Legends. And my tagline is 10-minute stories of exceptional Americans doing extraordinary things. So I'm trying to tell these stories of people in American history that are heroes, that are real life legends, the kind of people that movies are made out of. But in most cases, the legends that I choose haven't seen any screen time. So I really try to focus on characters that the average person doesn't know about. So yeah, you mentioned my first 2 episodes are Samuel Whitmore and Peter Francisco, who most people don't know about. I'm not doing George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, although I probably will at some point get around to those guys because there's a reason they're the most famous, right? But the thing, and you alluded to this earlier, the period when America became a nation, this country was so full of extraordinary, remarkable people. And the biggest ones, the most famous ones, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, they end up overshadowing all of these other just amazing figures. And rightfully, because they were the best, especially George Washington. But it ends up overshadowing all of these just extraordinary figures. Like I heard you mention John Jay earlier. Most people have never even heard of John Jay, and they have no idea all that he did for our country. It's such a good story. I'll definitely do a podcast about him at some point. But yeah, how do I come up with who I do next? That's a good question. It's a variety of ways. Samuel Whitmore, I knew right off the bat, that's the first one. That is such a legendary story. You have a 78-year-old farmer who ambushes an entire British column by himself. It is such a compelling American legend, badass story. I was like, I have to get this out there. And Peter Francisco, similar. He's just such an epic guy. So I knew that both of those had to be my first 2 stories. Now, how do I come up with the rest? A variety of ways. One thing that I like to do is I'll do posts a lot about people, like I mentioned, and about stories and legendary epic things that people do. And if a post ever does really good, I pay attention to that. So I've been paying attention over the past few months as I've been planning out this podcast. If I do a story of a post with a story of an exceptional figure from early US history and it goes huge and people really love it, they're liking, they're sharing, they're commenting, I make a note of that and I go, I definitely need to do a podcast on this because this is obviously very compelling to people and it's inspiring people, it's interesting people, and a post isn't enough. So people want to know more about it. And it worked out pretty good because the day before my Peter Francisco podcast came out, another history account, Barbarian Herodotus, which is an awesome account, he posted something like, who's your favorite historical figure from your country? And so a little self-serving, I quote reposted it, and I posted about Peter Francisco, but I said, I'm not going to do my favorite. I'm going to post about someone I think is underrated. And I just did a quick blurb about him. I said, this is a 5-year-old orphan who was found abandoned on a Virginia dock, who was taken in by Patrick Henry's uncle. He became known as the Hercules of the American Revolution. And then I just kind of listed a few of the things he did, like how he escaped capture from 10 British guards and stole their horses, how he hauled a cannon by himself so the British couldn't get it, how he led daring cavalry charges, how he did a suicide mission. But I didn't go into any of those. I just kind of listed them. And the reaction was all these people were commenting saying, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this guy. How have I never heard of him? I have to learn more about him. And so when I got that reaction to that post, I thought, yes, Peter Francisco, that was a good choice. This is a good story because people don't know a lot about him, but when they hear about him, they're very interested. So my goal is to find those stories and to tell them. And I can give you a little teaser because I know my next 2 episodes are actually already recorded, almost finalized, but episode 3 is going to be about Samuel Adams, which you might say, Jacob, everybody knows Samuel Adams. But I would push back and I'd say, everybody knows the name Samuel Adams. But why do they know the name? They know it because it's a beer. Almost nobody actually knows the story of Samuel Adams. So I actually think that one might be a gold mine because it's a familiar name, but an unfamiliar story. So I'm trying to tell his story. Episode 4 is going to be the Over Mountain Men, which I just think is one of the most epic stories in American history. It's like a real life story of the Ents. You have these frontiersmen across on the other side of the Appalachian Mountains, 300 miles away from the Revolutionary War. They want no part of the war. And then this British officer, overconfident, tells them that if they don't come surrender to the king, he's going to burn their houses, hang their leaders, set fire to their crops with fire and sword. You can't make that stuff up, man. It's like it's already pre-written for you. He literally threatens them with fire and sword. And so then these frontiersmen, they get together and they ride and they pull an army together and they go and take on this British officer on King's Mountain. And they just totally crush him. And then they go home. And I'm like, man, that is just what an awesome story that almost nobody knows about. And then after that, I'm going to do Caesar Rodney, who was, when they were drafting the Declaration of Independence, before they signed it, they needed to have each colony approve it. And his state was tied in a deadlock, same for, same against. And so he needed to come break the tie. The problem was he was hundreds of miles away. He was dying of cancer in bed, and there was a thunderstorm in between him and signing the Declaration of Independence. And this guy rides through the night. It's such an inspirational story that, once again, most people don't know about. That's a really long way to answer your question, but I try to find these stories of exceptional people that are extremely underrated, but their stories are so compelling. And I mainly do that just by interacting with my ex-audience and kind of testing the waters with posts and paying attention to what people really like, and then doubling down on that, because writing a post doesn't take that long, but putting a podcast together, that takes a long time. So I do want to make sure that I at least have some kind of indication that people are going to like it before I go ahead and launch into even researching the script.
Are you looking for natural ways to feel calmer during the day and sleep peacefully at night? Discover tranquil vibes and midnight vibes from campfireshop.com. 2 gentle, all-natural herbal formulas proudly made in the USA. Tranquil Vibes helps you unwind, release daily stress, and enjoy a peaceful, balanced feeling throughout your day. Midnight Vibes helps you fall asleep faster, sleep deeply through the night, and wake up refreshed and energized. Experience the gentle power of nature with these time-tested formulas. Visit campfireshop.com today and order Tranquil Vibes and Midnight Vibes for yourself or someone you love. I've known about Peter Francisco for a very long time, And honestly, I was never surprised that Hollywood never made a movie about him because it's almost impossible to cast something like that. Now, it'll be easier now if they decide to go the computer generated AI route. But we're talking about a guy, wasn't he 15 or 16 years old? And he was already 6'6" and 260 pounds. He was a monster. He was a gigantic guy. You mentioned the size of his sword. Wasn't it a 5-foot blade? And then you have an extra handle. So it's a 6-foot tall sword.
Yes, exactly right. Which, by the way, was ordered to be forged by George Washington himself. The story writes itself. I mean,
Yeah.
my problem with the Peter Francisco episode is that there was so many awesome stories about him that it was really hard to fit it into 10 minutes. Actually, that episode ended up being 15 minutes long. And to be honest, so episode 1 about Samuel Whitmore, it's such a clean story arc because we actually don't know that much about Samuel Whitmore. We know about his ambush, but not a ton else. So that one, there was a lot less information to work with, which made it easier to keep it to 10 minutes. And it kept it as a simple story arc because I have the intro hook, then act 1, you have the background that we know about him. Act 2, you have the setting of the context of the ambush, which is Lexington and Concord. Act 3, you have the ambush itself. Act 4, you have the aftermath. Now, Peter Francisco doesn't follow that clean of a story arc because he has so many awesome stories. So it's, what am I going to do? Just pick one story and give it the same treatment I gave Samuel Whitmore? I can't do that. So I made it as much of a story arc as possible, but it almost is like a Peter Francisco highlight reel where it just lists one badass thing after another that Peter Francisco does. I had it in chronological order and I tried to fill in the details and I tried to connect everything as much as possible. So it felt like one continuous entertaining story. So I don't know. Do you think I did a good job on that one? Or?
It's fantastic. I just happen to know a lot about him. And I've been to the Battle of Guilford Courthouse area in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's still there. There's nothing around it. They didn't build condos. They didn't put up a Sprint store. It is an established landmark, a historic site. And there was a monument to Peter Francisco. It's enormous. It's not a statue of him, but it's a monument. And you can see where the battle actually happened. And it was just an incredible place. I hope they make a movie about Peter Francisco someday. It's right up people's alley, and I hope they treat him right. But there's a museum across the street. It's not really a museum. It kind of sort of is. And you can see one of his shoes. And his shoe is like the size of a dog. This guy was unbelievably big. And you just go on with endless stories. So, yeah, I love it. I think that Hollywood really dropped the ball because why sit around in meetings trying to come up with ideas for storylines when you already have so many amazing stories that already exist and they're true and people want that kind of entertainment. Look at Young Washington. Have you been able to go to the theater yet to see that?
Yeah. When I saw the trailer for that, I thought, I have to see this movie.
Yeah.
So I had it on the radar with the wife for months. And so when it came out, we had a plan. We figured out a time that worked that I could get away for the 2 hours, which with previews, 2.5 hours. So we just found time that I could get away during the day so I could go see a matinee of that. It was basically over while the kids were taking their naps. So it worked out.
Yeah.
But to your point, oh my gosh, yes. And that exact reasoning that you just laid out, why sit around in a room and come up with a made up story when you just have a treasure trove from our history that are so good that the stories write themselves? That is the thesis of why I even started my podcast, is that right there. There's so many good stories that the average American doesn't know about. And we got to get it out there because they are inspiring. They are remarkable. These guys are exceptional. Their names deserve to be talked about. Their stories deserve to be told. And man, I had that thought when I was walking into Young Washington, because you're walking into the theater and you see all the posters for all the other movies coming out. And it's like, there is some movie. So you remember Shrek when that came out? That movie was huge. And then there was that character in one of the next Shreks, Puss in Boots. So a side character of Shrek has his own universe now. There's a movie out now that at the top of the movie poster, it said, from the Puss in Boots universe. And I thought, what are they doing? You've created a whole universe for this side character, and you're sitting on Peter Francisco and Samuel Whitmore. Come on, guys. But to your point, what Angel Studios has done with Young Washington, oh man, that movie was amazing.
Yeah. And it's inspiring, and people were in a good mood watching it. And at the end, people were applauding. And even if they didn't applaud, they left the theater in a good mood, which is so rare. I don't know the last time something like that happened. A lot of movies are very depressing. The bad guy wins. This was said. I remember years ago that movie came out, Leaving Las Vegas. And it was Nicolas Cage, and oh, wonderful, he won an award. Yeah, he played a drunk. And I'm sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking, I don't have any alcoholics in my family, thank goodness. But I knew one once, and it was depressing, and it's anxiety, and it's stress. And they actually sat around and said, let's make a movie about a guy who can't stop drinking and eventually dies. There's a great idea for a movie. And it was ridiculous. And you think to yourself, why not do Paul Revere? Why not do something positive? Why not do something inspirational? Why not do something exciting? And why don't you do something to kind of show the American culture and the American history in a positive light? I think the types of people, because I used to work in Hollywood, I think it just attracts a different type of crowd. It attracted, based on my experience, a lot of drug addicts, a lot of alcoholics, a lot of miserable, unhappy, angry people. It's not like it was in the 40s or the 50s where they're wearing a suit and they're going to work and they're excited and they're trying to tell a story and they're trying to be visually interesting and they're trying to do all sorts of exciting things. I love Cary Grant movies and Kirk Douglas. I love Errol Flynn. I love movies like that. And it was a different type of experience. And then something happened in Hollywood around 1968, 69, soon as Easy Rider came out. And that was an independent film, and it made a ton of money. And Hollywood at that point, that seems to have been the pivot. Hey, we could do movies like this, and we don't have to spend as much money on it. Yeah, it's negative. Yeah, it's depressing. But hey, it made a lot of money. And you can see where the tide turned. And maybe thanks to Young Washington, the tide will turn again.
Oh, yes, I hope so. Yeah, I don't watch a lot of movies, and it is due to the time I have available at this current stage of life. But also, yeah, a lot of them are trash, in my opinion. They're very dark, very depressing, which, yeah, I think to myself, why do I want to spend 1 to 2 hours immersing myself in this darkness? It's like, I would definitely much rather read a book than do that. And there are cases where that could be a good thing. I read Crime and Punishment, right? Oh my gosh, talk about a dark book. But it helps you understand something and it shocks you and helps you learn something. So I'm not saying there's not a place for dark movies, but to your point about the movie about the alcoholic, there's a point where you're like, why am I watching this? Why am I immersing myself in this? I don't see any benefit to this. But not only is it wasting my time, but it's also a negative effect on my time. So you said you used to work in Hollywood, which is cool. And I know on X, I saw you mentioned you wrote a screenplay about Peter Francisco once. Man, I would love to hear more about that. And I'd love to hear about what your thoughts were on the screenplay versus what I did with my 15-minute podcast. And I laid out earlier what my thinking was behind how I constructed it. So I would just love to hear your experience and then your thoughts on that.
I used to be something called a script doctor. And what that meant is that producers, directors, other screenwriters, they would hire me to jazz up their scripts. I'm pretty good with dialogue. A lot of people are not good at dialogue at all. I've read scripts where it's things like, "Hi, kind sir, can I have a glass of lemonade?" Nobody talks like that. But they're good at maybe writing action scenes, or maybe they have a good idea, but then they come up with dialogue that's nobody talks like this. It's very wooden. And so I would do things like that and liven it up. I'm a sort of a little bit of an expert on mythic storytelling. And so I would kind of add that to it as well. But I didn't really think that some stories were suitable for an hour and a half movie. It seems like series can be a much better way to tell stories. How do you tell the story of Peter Francisco in an hour and a half? How do you tell the story of Thomas Jefferson in an hour and a half, right? How do you do it? The Young Washington movie was fantastic. And now that it's revealed that they're going to do a second one and a third one, because they admit, come on. Because I was thinking to myself, okay, where's this going to end? This is going to be like a montage, and then we're going to see him in the office, or he's going to be dying in Mount Vernon, right? And it's no, they didn't go there. It's no, we're going to focus just on this. We're going to focus on this particular aspect of his life. And it was beautifully done because they were able to keep it tight. They were able to showcase this specific part of his life. And then the next one will be something else. And then the one after that will be something else. And I hope that they do that with other founding fathers as well. Hollywood's crazy. They really are. This is a ATM machine. This is a treasure chest. And they don't care. With all of the resources that they have available to them, you would think now is the time to jump on this thing. I'm really surprised. I'm really disappointed that we are in the United States. It was the 250th birthday, right? Still is. And nobody at Hollywood cared. How is that possible? Nothing. Young Washington, an indie production. But how, Jacob? How? Were there not 500 films like that this year? They knew it was coming. It's not like it was a surprise to anybody.
Yeah, Scott, I agree with you 100%. And I will say, and I have to say, spoiler alert, if anyone hasn't seen Young Washington yet, based on what I'm about to say, but what they did with that script was brilliant. It was just absolutely brilliant because they picked a perfect snapshot of his life that has a perfect character arc. It was just genius. They got all the key factors right. I'm not saying it was 100% historically accurate, especially with the battle scenes and everything, but they were cool. It was definitely awesome and fun and entertaining to watch. But as far as the overall story, they got the historical facts and they got the timeline. It's pretty right on, man. But his character arc and that story arc is perfect. It was perfect for a 2-hour movie. So they just picked the perfect chunk of his life that makes a perfect movie. But to your point, yeah, to really tell this story about a person, or even to really tell this story about a big moment or consecutive moments, you have to do a series. You have to. But to do a movie, yeah, you have to have a certain arc. And they did that with Young Washington because he has a great backstory. He has the ambition. He's a young man trying to fight against the old order. And then they just have that awesome line that they keep using. Even a pawn can take a king. The first time they said that, it gave me chills. And maybe they said it too many times. They kind of beat it into the crowd a little bit, but such a good line. Yeah, but you have this young man. So you have this overall story of this young man trying to break into the world. He has some advantages, but he has many disadvantages. And everyone's telling him he can't do it, but he does it, right? So you have that awesome setup. But then you have the arc of he rises fast, way too fast. And he makes terrible mistakes, just deadly mistakes that people die because of him. And then his reaction is, honestly, it feels appropriate, right? That he turns in his resignation. He says, I'm not fit to lead. It's very honest. But then he comes back and makes it up to his men. And then with that backstory, he becomes the hero. And it's like that character arc it's perfect for a movie. And by choosing that specific chunk of his life, it also is historically accurate. So it's just like, I watched that and I was like, okay, what I'm trying to do with my podcast, these guys are doing it on a much higher level, because that's what I'm trying to do too, is find a really good story in a real historical figure's life and find where is that story arc that will make it into a perfect 10-minute podcast that I can entertain people with. And I'm telling you, man, they found the perfect spot. And I was extremely impressed when I watched that.
Everybody has been. All right, listen, Hollywood can't do everything, so that's where podcasts can pick up the slack. So remind everybody once again where they can find you.
So my X account is called History with Jacob. That handle is History W Jacob. And my podcast is Stories of American Legends. I'm on everywhere: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Podcasts. I'm on everything. Anywhere you find your podcast, search for Stories of American Legends and you'll find me. Or go to my X account and I got links in the bio.
Very cool. All right, everybody. So let us know what your thoughts are about this conversation and about American history stories. Maybe you have some ideas for ones that you'd like to see covered in the future. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Check out the links to learn about my books and my podcasts and my social media links and my sponsors and more. You could also buy my books on Amazon about historic buildings, as well as the homes and gardens owned by the Beatles. Please check out my sponsor, campfireshop.com, for all natural supplements, soy candles, awesome teas, and more. It's a great way to support my research and productions. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys. Are you having trouble falling asleep or relaxing? Are you looking for all natural supplements to help manage your blood pressure, glucose, or cholesterol? Are you dealing with prostate and other issues? If so, then kindly check out the all-natural supplements at campfireshop.com. They are formulated from ancient remedies. They also have handcrafted soy candles and premium teas. Ordering via the link below helps support my research and productions. Enjoying the tour so far? Hey, did you know I'm the author of a lot of books, including ones about the homes of the Beatles? Kindly check out the links below to learn how to buy them. I have written about the Dakota, home of John Lennon, Friar Park, home of George Harrison, and Tidhurst Park, home of John Lennon and then Ringo Starr. And I've written some other books too. You can also make a donation to support my research and productions. You could also join me on other platforms for exclusive content. Now let's return to our tour.